weary travelers. I got a request to do the story of Kuras, and so I will do that. Okay, so we are going to follow Kuras. Hot on Kuras' heels, I squeeze my way out of the bar. Of everyone I've met, he seems the most likely to help me, and the least likely to murder me on a whim. I also, just briefly, because we're back in this gorgeous space, my partner and I were talking about the art in this game the other day, and one thing that they mentioned to me was that how the city reminds them a lot of the Arabic cities that they grew up in, but I really like the choice to highlight art that is reminiscent of like societies where like Islam is a key influence. A lot of the like beautiful archways in this city and the shapes both of the buildings and of like building features and objects. Like obviously we have this lovely stool here in the bar. We had the very pretty lights. There's a lot of influence that comes from like Middle Eastern cultures and North African cultures, and I think that for a game in this genre you don't often see that. Like usually it's sort of Western European styles of architecture and art, and like there's that's nice, right? But I do appreciate when artists sort of step out of that niche and look at the broader world and find inspiration there as well. I think especially juxtaposed with a game that is like at the very least very sensual. I think a lot of Western stereotypes of Islamic cultures is that wouldn't fly in them, but I think pairing sensuality and like references to Islamic art shows like an intersectionality that I really appreciate. Right? We can be sexually liberated and, have religious identities. Like the West doesn't have a monopoly on art or pleasure or beauty or any of these things that we see in this game. Yeah. So I just wanted to put that in because I thought it was interesting when my partner brought it up, and I think that we should talk about these things when they come up. Okay, so we're following Kuras. He's the least likely to murder us, most likely to help. Earlier this morning, he said I could go to the clinic for help whenever I needed it. Time to see if that promise was actually worth anything. I breathe a sigh of relief once I'm free of the crowded bar. Kuras, hearing me, turns my way.
Chronic, you seem upset. I take it the Amaryllis district is not to your liking.
The mage who raised me sometimes made bizarre comments about the Amaryllis district, and now I have an inkling of what she meant. That's not why I stepped out.
You are not in need of treatment after that fall, are you?
I scowl up at him, and he holds out his hands in a mollifying gesture.
I apologize, Chronic. Please continue.
About time. Someone cuts right across me toward Kuras, stopping us both in the middle of the street. Even in the dim pink haze that seems to blanket everything, there's no mistaking the pressed white uniform and stiffly starched hat. Another Cenobium cleric. I hastily step back, making myself as inconspicuous as possible.
Can I help you?
Nervous onlookers hastily part around Kuras and the cleric. The two form an island of white in a sea of teeming color. What a great visual. Enough, you know why I'm here.
Then I hope you find this edifying.
Kuras reaches into his coat and produces 3 tiny glass vials, bound together with a thick leather cord. A silvery powder shimmers inside. He gently flicks the glass, watching the contents swirl, and extends the vials to the cleric. "This is it." They look extremely unimpressed.
Appearances can be deceiving.
He throws me a glance and a swift smile, but I'm too surprised to respond. Kuras was the first to warn me about the cenobium. Nobody I met had anything good to say about them. And yet, here he is, openly dealing with them in the Amaryllis district? I glance between Kuras and the cleric, who seems to notice me for the very first time. Good night. They bow to Kuras, offer me an extremely perfunctory nod, and disappear into the seething crowd.
Chronic, is something amiss?
Yeah, what was that all about?
Lower your voice. It is of little consequence.
That's all you have to say? After the earful you gave me about the cenobium, you...
Shh. Be calm.
He holds one finger to his lips, which suddenly curl in a cat-like smile.
For now, please join me on a short stroll.
Kuras's golden eyes twinkle in the low light. He beckons me away from the main thoroughfare, down a side street filled with vendors hawking late-night snacks. Also, this, I want to call it a Sprite, even though it's, I feel like Sprite has very Pixel vibes, but whatever. This Sprite of Kuras is, chef's kiss. What? Wait! Now powerfully curious in spite of myself, I hurry after Kuras. Each of his long, graceful strides is easily 2 of mine. I catch a glimpse of his gleaming white coat disappearing around the corner of the street. The moment I catch up, the delicious scents of freshly baked goods flood my nose. My stomach gives a loud rumble.
1 honey pistachio cookie, please.
Coming right up. Without breaking his swift pace, Kuras plucks the sticky confection out of the merchant's hand and offers it to me. The heavenly smell makes my stomach rumble once more. I take a bite without hesitation. It sounds really good. A honey pistachio cookie? Yes, please. Also, I love that his first instinct is to feed us. That's very comforting and very wholesome. Kuras watches me with an indulgent smile, and I notice he hasn't gotten anything for himself. Okay, so this is at least the second time that he doesn't drink, as far as we have seen. Like, he didn't even get water at the bar. He also hasn't eaten anything. So, some interesting things. You're not hungry?
You need not concern yourself with me.
He stops mid-sentence, his eyes darting back the way we came. This expression on his face is also so sweet. The little... just the distress. The distress, especially on his eyebrows. It's cute. The hairs stick up on the back of my neck. I turn just enough to peek over my shoulder, hoping I don't look too suspicious. Sure enough, it's the same cleric who waylaid us in the street, now wearing a thunderously angry expression. Uh-oh.
Well, disappointment can be a learning experience.
He's secretly cute and funny. That's Kuras's secret. Glimmers of realization dawn over me as I stare up at him. What exactly was in those vials?
Perhaps a rare and potent alchemical catalyst, or some stale fish skin. The 2 do resemble one another, and it can be hard to tell them apart.
Is he serious? I chance another glance at the cleric, who's now trying to elbow their way between the food stalls. A few people make way, but most don't even notice their efforts. The street is far too crowded with hungry patrons.
Shall we?
Without even waiting for a response from me, he glides swiftly into the crowd once more. You're messing with a Cenobium cleric?
Such impolite behavior. I'm astounded you would even suggest it.
Kuras. I must still look incredulous because his smile softens a little. He lifts his hand as if to pat my shoulder, then stops himself. Okay, interesting.
As I said, you have nothing to fear.
He ducks into what looks like an abandoned doorway, but opens into a small, covered market. The stalls here are full of more spices than I knew existed. Even taking a short breath makes me sneeze. Kuras slows his pace, occasionally pausing to examine the insistent hawker's wares. Wait. He looks up from a display of livid red leaves, each as long as my forearm. You said I have nothing to fear, but everyone in Aridia seems wary of the Cenobium.
People fear the obvious trappings of power, wealth, force, or a hideously ostentatious tower.
Fucking get them, Kuras.
For my part, I find such trappings merely disappointing. The Cenobium once had great potential. They squandered it decades ago in the pursuit of trinkets, pleasure, and petty tyranny. Their narrow, prosaic interests have rendered them blind to all that moves. To all else that moves.
I think that's the most I've ever heard Kuras say on any topic. You sound like you know them well. Kuras lets out a long, low sigh.
You miss little, Chronic. Familiarity breeds contempt, and I am more familiar with the Cenobium's crude methods than I would like.
Now I'm getting somewhere. Something beyond vague warnings or swift deflections. I decide to press the point while I have the chance. Familiar how? Kuras stops right in front of a display of pickled fruits, and I nearly run into his back. He steps aside at the last moment. His arm rests gently but firmly on my waist. I tense, but he's careful to avoid my bandaged hands. Okay, so it's odd because I feel like we've had 2 moments now where he has avoided touch, but then literally he steps aside at the last moment to avoid us running into him, but then his arm rests gently but firmly on our waist. I feel like they're trying to insinuate something about touch, but then his arm touched us, so I don't know what. Anyway, just something to think about, I guess.
Our pursuer refuses to take no for an answer.
Them again? I thought we'd lost them in the crowd. I crane my neck to look for the cleric, but Kuras shakes his head.
This way.
The next street over seems to be home to the high-end brothels. It's full of steep stairways and shadowy passages, perfect for discreet trysts or losing a persistent tale. Pink curtains and painted facades sprawl around me like a giant, colorful warren. It only takes a few more twists and turns down blind alleys and narrow walkways before I'm completely turned around. Kuras, however, seems to be following some map in his own mind. He takes each turn with swift confidence, guiding me with the occasional nudge. The gaps between teetering buildings can hardly be called alleys, so narrow we have to pass through single file.
just a little further.
The effortless grace which he moves. I think they should have said with which. The effortless grace with which he moves is almost infuriating. It takes every ounce of concentration I have just to avoid tripping over loose tiles, discarded clothes, and unidentifiable rubbish. Meanwhile, his long legs almost seem to float over every obstacle. His clothes are still completely pristine, despite the soot-stained walls on either side. How the hell does he do it? Some sort of enchantment woven into his jacket? A glamour spell? I'm still trying to puzzle it out when I realize how warm it is with me practically tripping on his heels. Interesting. The tiny gap between us seems to radiate heat, like beating midday sun on the longest day of summer. Oof. Where I live, that is a bad day. You do not want to be in the midday sun on the longest day of summer. It's really hot. But we are going to stay close to Kuras. I definitely don't want to get lost here. I stay as close to Kuras as I can without actually touching him.
I promise I will not lose you.
Was I that obvious? Our eyes meet, and despite my best efforts, I find it hard to hold his gaze. I've never seen eyes like his. Despite our dark and dingy surroundings, it's like Kuras radiates his own light whenever he looks at me.
Thank you for indulging me, Chronic. I believe we have lost our tail.
It's much quieter on the edges of the Amaryllis district, It's much quieter on the edges of the Amaryllis district, and the deals in the shadows look shadier.
Did you enjoy your impromptu tour?
Relief escapes me in a tired laugh. After the day I've had, playing keep away from a Cenobium cleric seems almost normal. I wasn't in mortal peril, so that's a nice change of pace. He laughs too, a soft and pleasant chuckle completely at odds with his usual cool demeanor. Are you sure we've lost that cleric?
If there is one thing you can count on, it is the elitism of the Cenobium's finest. They will not deign to follow us this far.
He sounds confident enough. I was starting to wonder if we'd have to make a full circuit of the city to ditch them. A beam of moonlight cuts through the clouds, casting his face into sharp relief.
However, I should escort you back to your lodgings. It would be unwise to let you go alone.
What about you? Are you staying at the Wet Wick? No, Chronic. Why would you think that? Everything that we've... No. Okay.
Of course not.
Yeah, literally. Of course. Of course not. Then you're going back to your clinic alone? You just said that was a bad idea. He pauses, stares at me, then his expression relaxes into a gentle smile.
Fear not, Chronic. Only the most desperate or foolish would dare lay a hand on me.
It sounds insane after 2 near-death soulless encounters, but part of me believes him. The few people who are still out huddle beneath street lamps and in doorways, desperate to be as close to safety as possible. Kuras, on the other hand, looks more relaxed than I've ever seen him. He's strolling down the middle of the street, bold as if it were broad daylight. Even walking alongside him makes me feel more secure, warmer both inside and out. I hang on to that faint spark of hope and screw up my courage. Did you mean it this morning, when you said I could come back to you for help?
Every word.
All his earlier mirth vanishes, replaced by calm focus. I don't know what to say to that. I almost expected his offer to be a courtesy, an easy way to get me out the door. The fact that he meant it...
Why do you ask? I believe I have already made my intention to help you quite clear.
His eyes flick briefly to my arm, the one that he miraculously reattached when he found me. I can almost imagine him counting the neat stitches. I just wanted to make certain. I'm still figuring out who's trustworthy and who's trouble.
I see. Iridia does tend to attract extreme individuals.
Including you?
Ah, Chronic. I decline to incriminate myself in your eyes.
I can recognize a smooth deflection when I hear one, though if he won't talk more about himself, maybe he'll tell me about someone else. I decide to ask about, and we're just going to go through the list. Why do you send me to Leander for help?
Few know Iridia better than Leander. The company he keeps can be questionable, but I had confidence in him.
Yeah, his bloodhounds seem rough around the edges.
Leander has always preferred the company of those like him. Survivors of Lowtown's harshest realities. You must have noticed how they flock to him.
I nod. He seemed to know every single person in the Wet Wick. And that's a good thing.
Leander's closest peers trust him with their lives. I would say that counts for something.
Okay, let's talk about Vare. How do you know Vare? Ooh, Angie. Kuras visibly stiffens, and I remember... Kuras visibly stiffens, and I remember the venom in Vare's voice when he grabbed me. That fucking doctor. Or excuse me, I'll do it in Vare's voice. That fucking doctor. It looks like the feeling is very much mutual.
Regrettably, Vare is one of my worst patients. How did you cross his path?
Interesting that Vare is a patient of Kuras. He stole my room key.
You are fortunate that he did nothing else.
In fact, it's very interesting that Vare would be a patient of Kuras, because Vare is part of the Cenobium, and I would assume that they have their own healers, especially for their, contract killers, like, Vare. Or not even contract, forced assassins, is that a thing?
He is far deadlier than he seems. There is a reason he is not at liberty, a reason for the collar and chain.
He seemed pretty dodgy to me already. I hesitate, waiting for Kuras to elaborate, but he seems to find even the thought of Vare distasteful. Have you ever been out to see eyes at the sea spring?
Once.
Only once? Seems like a spring with miraculous powers would interest a doctor. A long silence follows, so long that I'm not sure Kuras heard me. I'm about to repeat myself when he finally speaks in a near whisper.
Ice is the rare newcomer who has proven himself immediately worthy of respect. The sea spring is another matter. Hidden depths often contain unwelcome secrets.
You could say that about anything around here.
A fair point. Nonetheless, I have seen many purported wonders, and the sea spring is unlike any other. Only time will tell what that means.
You and Min sounded like you knew each other well. Kuras heaves a long-suffering sigh.
I know them better than most, and less well than I would like. Like you, Min is a recent arrival. Their time here has been particularly difficult. As much as I would like to help.
He trails off, but I know exactly what he's talking about. Min doesn't seem like the sort of person who would accept help easily. Do they always pick fights that are twice their size?
I have implored them not to. They rarely listen.
With my curiosity sated for now, I fall silent. I wish Kuras had given me just a little bit more to go on, but he seems almost as tight-lipped about others as he is about himself.
By the time we're back at the Wet Wig, the Amaryllis district seems even noisier and more raucous than before. Drunken patrons overflow into the streets, which reek of spilt wine. How am I supposed to sleep with all this racket? I suggest the stiffest drink at the bar. Alternatively, a ball of wax. Very funny. Even with how tired I am, I'm not sure I'll get a wink of sleep. I'm about to say goodnight to Kuras when someone staggers out of the Wet Wig and right into me. I stumble back, heels teetering on the edge of the filthy gutter. Chronic? The next thing I know, a pair of warm arms catch me around the waist. I find myself staring up at Kuras, pressed against his chest. His grasp loosens, but he doesn't quite let me go. Something shifts in his gaze. His eyes fix on my face, and I feel myself growing hot all over at his intense scrutiny. What does he see in me? What's he looking for? Kuras? Yes. You can let go. Are you quite sure someone else may stumble into you? This time I can feel the heat of his laughter, the way it flutters through his chest and mine. I'm actually not sure. My head swims, Kuras's warmth and closeness washing over me. I shouldn't be this close. If I touch him by accident, if I somehow curse the man who saved my life. Good night, Chronic. He finally steps away, and I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Good night. Thanks for everything today. You are most welcome. He turns and slips into the crowd, though I can pick out his pristine white coat with ease. A chilly gust howls down the street. When did it get so cold out? Very interesting, very interesting. So that was Kuras's route. I don't know if I got the sort of, not secret, I wouldn't call it a secret end, but like the better end for him. I'm not sure. I can't remember. But yeah, I think he's a really interesting character, especially because he keeps so much to himself. I also like how in this extended bit for Kuras we saw more of his personality, which I feel like we didn't get a ton of when we were in his clinic, because he was kind of setting us up, like doing a lot of exposition, right? And he has a good sense of humor. He's like really, it seems like he can't decide whether he's serious or funny, and it'll be interesting to see if there's like a reason for that. Yeah. I hope you enjoyed Kuras's route, and I will see you in the next video when we start a new game. Okay, bye.